Kent Hans, best storyteller in Texas. Saying of the day, never argue over non-consequential matters. Frank Irwin, who was chairman of the board at University of Texas and was a controversial guy, told me that one time. Some people got in an argument on the Senate floor about something, and he said it didn't matter, And so don't argue over things like that. You get mad, they'll get mad, and it doesn't help you. Just ignore it. He said somebody can tell you something that's just totally wrong, but you don't want to get in an argument with them if it's not going to have an outcome that's going to help you.
Did you see that the Frank Irwin Center, they started tearing it down?
Yeah, started tearing the drum. It's been there a long time, and a lot of fond memories of state championship basketball. That was played there, and many heartaches and heartbreaks in that facility. The Moody facility is great, and of course they shrunk it so that they'd have basketball teams all across the country are trying to get lower capacity so that it'll have a home court advantage. Baylor's in the process of building a new basketball facility. It's going to seat like 8,000 or 9,000, and their old one, which was good, was like 12,000. And they were having year before last, Baylor played Texas Tech in Waco, and Baylor was rated number 1 in the nation, and Tech upset them. But they had, it was probably 60% full, and so they want it full, they want it packed, and that's the reason they're redoing it. And those facilities, a lot of them throughout the country, are for graduation as well as basketball, something like that. But the Frank Irwin Center came to a close, and Frank Irwin, some environmentalists, they didn't want some trees torn down near there, and he went over and got on the Caterpillar and drove it at them. Said he's going to run over them if they didn't get off, and they got off. He knew Frank wasn't kidding.
Frank meant business.
Yeah, he was a tough guy. He was a tough guy.
We have a lot to get to today in today's episode, including the percentage of people that think they can land an airplane, also how much a good date cost, and of course we have a stupid criminal. We'll also discuss the passing of Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor and the expulsion of George Santos. Before we get to any of that, though, Chancellor, you say that you've got some words about the importance of your reputation and your character.
Yeah, the reputation's what people think of. Your character's what you actually are. But both of them are very important. If you're doing business of any kind, your reputation is so important. Apple has they have a reputation for being new on every kind of watch or gadget that you can think of. And so when they come out with some announcement, they've got credibility. And I think that's the most important thing. In this day and time, and I tell young people this all the time, in this day and time, your reputation is so important because it's influenced by things you don't have control over, like social media. And you need to stay away from social media. I have college students that they'll post different things on social media that may come back and haunt them 5 years later. And so, you're better off not posting things. That you always look and see if you want other people to see that someday. There's an old saying, a friend of mine, Mike Sanders, who's now deceased, was a great guy. And he had a saying that before he'd hit send on an email, he'd look at what he was sending, and before he would read it out loud, something, he'd say, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," and then read it. Does that sound good? Is that something I want? So if you're getting ready to send something on social media or email or text message, say, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," and then read it, and then it'll give you a sobering thought. Do I really want this in a courtroom?
That makes a perfect segue to a courtroom, to the passing of the first female Supreme Court Justice, Sandra Day O'Connor.
I remember when she was appointed, I was in Congress, and the White House ran by. Reagan wanted to appoint a woman, and they were looking at a lady in Texas also. And Sandra Day O'Connor She was originally from Texas. She was born in El Paso, graduated from Austin High in El Paso, and went to Stanford undergraduate and law school. She was very well qualified. She was qualified judiciously because she was very smart and a great jurist. And she was also qualified politically. She had been a state senator in Arizona. And they could not have picked someone any better. She did great. She wrote good opinions. We had her out when I was chancellor at Texas Tech. Mark Lanier, a friend of mine and his friend of hers, a lawyer from Houston, brought her out, and she spoke and did a great job and inspired a lot of people.
Here is Charles Cooper, who was a Reagan administration official who helped screen the Supreme Court nominees.
It is hard to exaggerate her role on the court or her importance to the court's decision making. In one case after another, at least one controversial case after another, the essential swing or deciding vote is generally recognized to be Justice O'Connor's. She was the most important single appointment made to the federal bench by President Reagan.
Chuck Connor's a great lawyer, he's a great constitutional lawyer, and he was on the team that helped, narrow it down to 2 or 3 people. And President Reagan looked at them and talked to them. Chuck, I was involved in a case with him year before last. It had to do with airlines and letting employees go for not taking the shots on COVID. And he's one of the smartest persons I know. And to have him in charge of screening the candidates, but whoever made that decision made a great decision. He was well qualified to figure out who should serve and who shouldn't.
More on Justice O'Connor. Here she is in an interview with 60 Minutes and Texas Tech alumni Scott Pelley, talking about being the first female nominated to the court.
I've often said it's wonderful to be the first to do something, but I didn't want to be the last. If I didn't do a good job, it might have been the last.
Well, I mean, she had good common sense. She was very smart, wrote good opinions, had a lot of influence on the court, but she had common sense and judgment. If she had not been as good as she was, it would have been difficult for the next woman to be appointed. And she was excellent.
Last thought on Justice O'Connor. Here she is talking about the ripple effect of her nomination.
It had an incredible ripple effect of making opportunities become available for women. It was just a remarkable transformation. And I really think he deserves an enormous amount of credit for making that happen in this country.
Yeah, President Reagan, in doing that, everyone thought that the first woman on the court would be nominated by a Democrat. And Reagan, he wanted a woman on the court that was well qualified and that was conservative, and that's what he got. And she did an excellent job. Any time that you're looking there, the easy thing in establishing relations with China back in 1970 was it came from Nixon, and instead of coming from a Democrat, most people thought that it would have come from a Democrat, came from a Republican, and so it was an easier sell in establishing a relationship with China. He had Reagan had Henry Kissinger, who passed away last week at the age 100. He came to the United States, and they were his parents. They were refugees, from Germany, and they were trying to avoid the Soviet Union and what all was happening there. And he went to Harvard and got every degree he could, and was very smart, had good common sense. I mentioned I was seated at the table with him at the White House at a dinner, and he said, "Now, Congressman, you were a professor one time." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, higher education politics is mean and tough." And I said, "Why do you think that?" And he said, "There's so little to fight over. That's the reason it gets mean." He said, "It's like church politics. I've been around churches that get in political fights over the preacher or something. Boy, those are mean. I mean, they're you want to avoid those. It'll have scars that'll last forever.
When I was looking back on Sandra Day O'Connor in preparation for this podcast, it made me think of something that you said once to your daughter, and that was about going into a man's world, and you told her, well, go be president of the Good Old Boys Club. Yeah. And Sandra Day O'Connor, boy, she did.
She did. I mean, she went in, and instead of, making speeches about how they weren't treating her right or something like that, she got to be, president of the unofficial Good Old Boys Club. And I told my daughter that everybody said, well, it's a good old boys world and everything. Then be a part of it. I would tell any young lady, be a part of it, know what's going on, and be friendly to everybody, and you'll become the president of the Good Old Boys Association.
We go from one end of the scale to the other end of the scale when it comes to character and reputation, as we talk from Sandra Day O'Connor to George Santos, who was expelled from the House of Representatives this week. I put together a montage of all of George Santos's lies, not all of them, quite a few of them, directly from his mouth when he said them. This is pretty amazing to listen to.
Good morning. Shabbat shalom to everybody.
I've seen how socialism destroys people's lives because my grandparents survived the Holocaust.
I'm a Latino Jew.
My mom was a 9/11 survivor.
They sent me to a good prep school, which was Horseman Prep in the Bronx.
I actually went to school on a volleyball scholarship.
But I put myself through college and got an MBA from NYU.
When I was in Baruch, we were the #1 volleyball
Did you graduate?
team.
But I also founded my own nonprofit organization.
I sacrificed both my knees and got very nice knee replacements from HSS.
It was in summer of 2021 on 5th Avenue and 55th.
My company at the time, we lost 4 employees that were at Pulse nightclub.
She was in the South Tower, and she made it out. She got caught up in the Ash Club.
Did I embellish my resume? Yes, I did.
Everything you just heard that came out of his mouth was a lie.
Yeah. I mean, he was a pro when it came to telling lies and exaggerating things. Talking about he was on a volleyball scholarship and he had to have his knees replaced, and his mother was at 9/11, was in one of the towers, and just, reminded me of Blumenthal, the U.S. Senator from Connecticut, that he was highly decorated in Vietnam. He didn't go to Vietnam. Santos, they removed him. That's not an easy vote because you're in effect saying, well, the people in that area don't know what they're doing, so we're going to second guess them. And it can happen to anyone. But the most amazing thing to me is that during the debate, somebody said he lied during a campaign. We got to get rid of him. I bet you they could find 1 or 2 more liars up there, that he wouldn't be the only one. But the vote, that's a hard vote because you're voting to remove someone that was elected by people. It was just like when Pelosi didn't like what the lady from Georgia, what is her name?
Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Didn't like what she's saying and what she's doing and removed her from the committee. I don't think a speaker has a right to remove someone from the committee. They need to be able to justify it. She didn't like what she was saying. But if you get into a deal that you can remove people pretty easy, that means the public, their decisions are not going to be listened to very much. But I think that what would have happened, he wasn't going to run for re-election, and that if he had, he was going to get defeated. So he was going to get replaced one way or another. But just removing somebody, that's not an easy vote. And I think a lot of the people that voted not to remove him, they weren't for what he had done. They were against it, but they thought the public ought to be the one that does that. They got him in, they can get him out.
How would they go about removing him?
The public just
through election?
Yeah, the next election. Just vote against him. And I think he had said that he wasn't going to run again. Even he was smart enough to know that the end was near. And evidently, this is a guy that when he'd rather lie than tell the truth. So many times they brought up things he had said that it was not anything that would have helped him to lie about. He had some psychological problems that were a little unusual, but
can he run again if he wanted to?
He could. He hadn't been impeached or anything, and hadn't been prevented. He could, but with what the public knows, I'm amazed that no one brought out those in the campaign. You always do research on your opponents, and sometimes you'll find some things that'll help you. Sometimes you'll find some things that that won't help you, and but his opponents, they didn't do a very good job on a background check on him. They should have asked him, during the campaign, did you do such and such? You say you did, but there's no record of it. I had an employee that I hired in Washington, and she had on her resume she was Phi Beta Kappa at the University of Maryland. And after a couple of weeks, I thought, boy, they must have lowered their standards for Phi Beta Kappa, and we checked on it, and she wasn't Phi Beta Kappa, and had just put that on her resume. Because a lot of people don't check a resume out. I had a guy that I called a president of another university, and I called him about this person that had applied for a deanship. And I said, I was calling about so-and-so and wanted to get your input. We were looking at him. He's a finalist for being dean of such and such school. And what kind of, situation was he involved in, and was he a good employee or was he a bad employee? And he's just silent. And I said, "Are you still there?" And he said, "Yes."
That's all you need to know.
And that's all I needed to know. I mean, he did tell me that his mother told him, if you can't say something good, don't say anything at all. And he wasn't saying anything, so I took the guy off the list. And in the next job the fella got, I was reading in the Chronicles of Higher Education. He lasted 2 months. He got fired. So, the guy just being silent told me a lot.
Going back to the woman that claimed to be Phi Beta Kappa, when you let her go, did you say you're not Phi Beta Kappa?
Well, I did. I told her, I said, we're not pleased with your work, and we followed up on your resume. And University of Maryland says you've never been a member of Phi Beta Kappa at University of Maryland. And she said, well, I thought I was, and I said, I wouldn't put that down because somebody checks it out. They're going to figure out you're not telling the truth. And she was always late. Mm-hmm. She's late getting her work in. She's late getting to work. She's early leaving. But just it didn't work out. And so we were nice to her and said, it just didn't work out. You need to move on down the road.
We encourage you to follow us on Instagram at The Best Storyteller Podcast. Check out our website as well, which is HantzPodcast.com. And we would love to hear from you. Send email to info@HantzPodcast.com. Chancellor, an interesting number for you. They asked a group of people, and they said, what percentage of you guys, how many of you guys think you could land an airplane? And an amazing 32% said yes, they could land
32%. They were of the opinion if the pilot has a heart attack, I could land that plane. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. They must have been watching some movie. There is a YouTube deal about a guy landing a King Air, and he had 8 hours of training in a Cessna 182, small Cessna. But he landed that King Air. Pilot had a heart attack, and his wife was putting it on YouTube. And was in the back, and he knew something. He had 8 hours, mm-hmm. So he knew what the instruments were when they were telling him do this and do that. But just to land a plane, everything happens so fast. That's absurd. That 32% of people think they could land a plane. That doesn't happen. Now TBM airplane, they have a new version. The 950 and the 960, and they're built in France or Switzerland. Great plane. And they have one that you punch a blue button and the automatic pilot will find the nearest airport and land.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
That's quite a safety feature.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's an expensive one too, but it's worth having if you ever.
Yeah, if that's the deal. I had I bought a plane and to get de-icers was going to cost I think something like another $50,000. And if you happen to get into an ice storm or a snowstorm, I don't want to be going down thinking, well, I'm sure glad I saved that $50,000. So I paid a little more and got de-icers. If you get ice on a plane, it's it will not stay up, and we've seen planes that happened to the plane. The Air Florida pilot did. He got his plane de-iced, but he was sitting on the runway waiting for an opening to take off, and it snowed more. And I got on a plane in Austin about 2 years ago, and I was going to go to Midland, and as I went up the stairs, I could feel ice on the handle of the stairs. And I said something to the pilot, and he said, we just got that. So he goes out there and checks, and we went back and got de-iced again.
Wow. Good call.
Yeah. You always look. I'm always suspicious.
Chancellor, an interesting number that a good, quote unquote, good date cost $196.
$196. A lot of things have changed. A friend of mine from Texas Tech and later served on the Board of Regents and a top-rated bond lawyer in the state, Jerry Turner, he took his wife to the wrestling matches in Lubbock. They were in college, and his first date with Diane was take her to the wrestling matches, and they've been married over 50 years, so it worked out. And she got to see Dory Funk and Tokyo Joe and the Funk brothers all wrestle, and so it worked out. She had a good time, and that was more important than if he had taken her to a nice steakhouse and to a movie. They went to the wrestling matches to be entertained.
You need to tell that story to the people that may have missed it. We've told it before, and you can hear it if you go through the previous episodes of the podcast. There's a lot of great content there. But the story you told about the girl and you're making out in the front seat and what you asked her.
Well, that was the old story that we've been kissing and we'd parked and I said, do you want to get in the back seat? And she said, I want to stay up here with you. And I knew there wasn't a future for us, that she was going to be limited. I'd be answering a lot of questions the rest of my life. And so it was, I was stunned. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry.
Just act like it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Just act like it didn't.
Keep on going.
Did you see that story about a smart toilet that burst into flames?
Yeah, it blew up. The guy barely got his britches up. He said that he smelled smoke, and that then he pulled his britches up, and about that time it blew up and caught on fire, and he escaped. That's you don't want a toilet to catch on fire. I mean that'd be quite an explosion.
For the life of me, I can't figure out why you'd need a smart toilet. It's not that hard to figure out.
No, but somebody's always coming up with something new and calling it smart, and people think, well, I got to have that. Right. I like the books, Such and Such for Dummies. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine, Hank Seal, who's really done well in business, banking business, he read computers for Dummies. And he was trying to come up with some methods to make it faster to transfer money and everything, and did. And it's made. He got Q2, and that's the name of the stadium here, and that's his company. And so he admits he spoke to my class, and they loved him. He did a great job. He admits, he bought a book, Dummies, Computers for Dummies. And that he didn't know that much about it. So he read, and his wife was driving the car, and he was reading, Dummies and Computers, and he was trying to see, what he could figure out, and he did well.
Yeah, what an endorsement for those books.
Yeah.
I mean, he did very well. A person that didn't do well is a woman that stole $800 worth of Barbies.
Yeah, at first time I saw that, I thought she stole 800 Barbies, and I guess that'd be it'd be a little more expensive, $800 worth of Barbies. If they caught me with $800 worth of Barbies, somebody has planted it. I can assure you that I wouldn't pay $800. And somebody asked me if I'd been to the movie Barbies, and I said on this show, I have not been, and I'm not going. Let somebody else go. It's not not something I need to be doing. But the police chased her. She did it at a Walmart, stole the $800 worth of Barbies, and the police chased her, and they were hitting high speeds, and they quit. A lot of times in this day and time, police be chasing somebody and they'll just get too reckless, and they're afraid they'll run over some innocent citizen. They'll just, especially if they get their license number, they'll just get them. They got her the next day, arrested her, and she, thought that they were just following her. She didn't know that they were trying to arrest her. They had on their lights and siren and everything, and she had stolen merchandise. And she's saying, "Well, I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what was going on." It's one thing to play stupid, but it's something else to play super stupid, and that's what she was doing.
As we wrap things up here, Chancellor, next week, make sure that you download the podcast because we have your interview with Drayton McClain.
Drayton McClain is a great Texan, owned the Astros at one time, was vice chairman of the board at Walmart. Took him 3 years to get in to see Sam Walton at Walmart, and he has a great story to tell, and I would encourage everybody to listen. He's a true Texan and a great American.
And before we go, you want to remind everybody one last time the saying of the day.
Saying of the day is never argue over non-consequential matters. You get in an argument over something that it's not going to help you to explain something to somebody. Don't do it. Just let them be wrong. You have a great day and have a good week this week and the coming weeks as we approach Christmas. Be a good time to see friends and have fellowship with relatives.